Come get some.
Welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are looking at Duke Nukem Land of the Babes. This was actually the third Duke Nukem game and final Duke Nukem game that was actually released on the actual PlayStation itself during its lifespan, and it was actually released around 2001, 2002, and it used the same concept of the previous game in the series, Duke Nukem Time to Kill. I've actually done a previous video on that there as well, so I'll leave a link in the card and in the description so you can check that out as well. So it's essentially a third person action adventure game. They follow the same kind of idea as the Tomb Raider games, if you've ever played them. Duke Nukem originally started out on the PlayStation as a first person shooter, but if you don't know the history of Duke Nukem, you can definitely check out the history on the likes of Google and so forth, or even other channels on YouTube will go more in depth. Originally started years ago as like a 2D side scrolling platform shooter, and it eventually evolved into a third person shooter, and it actually became one of the best third person shooters of all time during the mid 90s when it was released, because it was very unique for what it offered, and it actually was dark in its humour, but it was also funny, but yet it was more adult themed as well. And these here games are pretty much the same, but the adult theme isn't as prevalent in this as it is in the very first game. The first game was definitely a bit more graphic in that sense. So essentially very similar to Time to Kill, this game here requires Duke he go back in time to actually help like a female resistance group where all men on the planet have been wiped out by the aliens that have taken over the world in the future, and quite naturally it's up to Duke Nukem to pretty much save the day. So you go through the levels pretty much in typical kind of Duke Nukem fashion, with the one-liners and the cheesy sayings, and even in the same like of Tomb Raider style where you're jumping around, grabbing onto different ledges, finding secret areas, taking out as many enemies as possible. It plays exactly the same as the Tomb Raider games, but it just has Duke's unique humour. I have to say now, when I first experienced this game, even though the previous games in series, I will be honest, if I was to compare the three, this would be my least favourite of the three. It's not to say it's a bad game, it's actually a good game, it's actually a fun game, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as the first two games. I loved the Duke Nukem 3D, that's actually one of my all-time favourite first-person shooters, but I also really enjoyed Time to Kill. I thought that game was actually really good as well, even though it was very, very different. I remember when I did play it. But again, check out those previous videos as well, as I'll leave a link in the description so you can check them out, and I'll just share my memories and so forth with those games. But I remember when I first actually seen this here, to be honest actually, I didn't even know that this game was actually being released. I didn't even see it in magazines and so forth. I've been kind of just going around just playing games and never even passed much remarks, and I hadn't been taking much note of gaming news at that time. I kind of stepped away from like reading magazines and so forth for a while, and I actually was walking away, and I remember actually one of the days I went, and I was only after getting my weekly wages as I got paid, and I went into town one Saturday morning, and I went into the local CD kind of music store, and it was actually there on the shelf, but it was actually only like 12 or 12.99 or 13 pounds, Irish pounds at the time. And I remember actually seeing it, and I was like, oh, new Duke Nukem game. I was like, oh, I didn't know about this. And I was like, oh, this is cool. So it was like, straight away it was Duke Nukem, because I was a fan of the series. And I was like, alright, this is awesome, a new Duke Nukem game so that I can play. But at the same time I was like, the price is like, cause the game had only been released only a couple of weeks, but it was really, really cheap. It was released like on like a budget kind of like limit. It wasn't like a full price game, which was insane. And I remember actually seeing the price, I was like, that can't be right. It's only like £13 at the time, and I was like, no, this definitely cannot be right. But at the same time I says, right, you know what, while it's there, I says, sweet, it was a bargain actually, which it was like. So I was like, right, I thought to myself, right, nice one. And I have to say now, I did enjoy the game. It was a bit fiddlier, I have to admit, compared to even Time to Kill. Time to Kill was actually, it could be a bit glitchy at times in terms of how it played, and this here was actually no different. If anything, this here was probably a little bit more so, even though this was a sequel. But I found that at times this here was actually a harder game to play, but I still enjoyed it all the same. I just actually found the campaign and the levels in Time to Kill actually more fun to play and was better. Plus in Time to Kill I actually enjoyed the deathmatch, the one-on-one death matches in that game as well. We could play with your mates. That was actually quite good fun. This one here had similar kind of concept, but I didn't really play the deathmatch in it as much because a lot of my friends and stuff like that, they'd all gone on to like playing the PlayStation 2 and bought other consoles and stuff like that, because that was around the time when the PlayStation 2 was released, when this came out. So this was definitely more towards the latter end of the PlayStation's lifespan when this was actually released. Now I actually enjoyed it. I played through the campaign. It is actually a really good game in my opinion, like for a third person action game. Even if you can get over the fiddly controls, and they're still fiddly even today, because as you can see from the gameplay, I haven't played it in a while, so it's definitely taking a bit of getting used to trying to figure out what to actually do next. But if you can overcome that, there is actually a decent game here, and you will actually have a good laugh of playing it. So I was just playing through the first level. This just for this video here, just to kind of get an idea of how it all works again, pretty much, because like I said, I hadn't played it in a long time, so it was interesting to get back into it. But it's still good. It's definitely, for me, not as good as the previous two, as I mentioned. I just thought they were better games in general. But Duke Nukem was always better as a first-person shooter, anyway, in my opinion, because like the first game in the series is considered one of the best FPS games of all time, due to its level design and unique humour and the whole lot and that. So when it went to third person, it was very different, but it was one of those type of genres where they were experimenting with loads of different types of game styles for each iteration of the game. But the most popular one was always the first person, Duke Nukem 3D, or Total Meltdown as it was known in America and on the PC, because that game was heavily modded, because it used the original build engine and people could mod it, so it left for loads of longevity with that. People creating their own levels and their own kind of plot lines and stuff, so it's pretty cool. Whereas like with these third person games, they were pretty much what you see is what you get. There was no real modding or anything like that. There was nothing, you couldn't really do anything like that. You didn't have that luxury doing that. And these games here were on console only. They were only ever released really on the PS1, so they never really saw the light of day outside of other consoles anyway. So if you wanted to play these, PlayStation was the only place really that you could play them at the time. Now it's a good game, don't get me wrong, like it definitely is an enjoyable experience, and I do highly recommend, if you're a fan of Duke Nukem or even like third person action games, definitely give it a go. It's just, for me, it just wouldn't be the best one in the series. It's even though it's the third one, but for me it was definitely the least popular or the weakest in my opinion in the series. But it's still definitely a worthy playthrough that does offer an adequate challenge, and it is actually a funny game. Duke has a lot of very funny one-liners in this here that actually will give you a bit of a giggle. So it definitely is, even just for playing that, even just for that experience alone, it is worth actually having a look into. So I do highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't done so already. So again, as you can see, like in typical fashion with these type of games, you could find and unlock secret areas, but due to the camera angles, sometimes could be quite glitchy as well, so you get stuck like I did here. It took me ages to figure out where to go, and a lot of times as well, because some of the areas are really dark, you do have to turn the brightness up on your TV or on the game itself as well to be able to actually see what's going on, because if not, you'd be just totally stuck. And I found that sometimes could be a bit of a nuisance as well. But I remember Time to Kill was very similar in that sense as well too. You could get stuck in areas and just took a little bit of a while to figure out what to do. So this was no different in that sense. But it's still worthwhile, like I said, if you do like playing these type of games and you like exploration, like trying to find secrets and hidden items, these games are great for that. You'll definitely get your money's worth for it out of it, that's for sure. But again, it's totally up to yourself. If you do enjoy these games, definitely feel free to give it a, because it is definitely a game to play on the PlayStation as well. Definitely a game worth experiencing, and it's interesting just to see the likes of the Duke Nukem franchise, to see where it actually all started on the console, and to see the changes of how it went on as the years went on. So that's it for this video of Duke Nukem Land of the Babes. What are your experiences of it? Are you a fan of the Duke series? And if so, have you played this game for long, and what did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Or maybe not? Be sure to let me know down in the comments and share your experiences. So if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on that bell icon to be updated whenever I release future videos, as I am going to be continuing to revisit and explore all these old games that I used to play, and even experience other games I never got to play, and sharing my thoughts and experiences with all of you. So as always, until next time, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and make sure to keep those gaming memories alive.